Hey there, welcome to Chief's Shop and to Hey Chief, where I answer your questions about my projects and woodworking in general. Today I've got a couple of questions that are very beginner focused, as a lot of them have been here lately. And the first one is on tools, and I'm asked what I would recommend for beginners to get first. I get asked this question a lot. I have a lot of different answers depending on the situation, but I'm going to kind of dial it back and go down to the basics and give an idea of what I really think for a true beginner to get if you have no tools at all. The very first one would be a drill. Cordless would be preferable, but if you're really budget minded, you can get a corded drill. You're not going to have the flexibility necessarily with a variable speed, but a good 18 volt cordless drill would be perfect. Then I would recommend a jigsaw. This is a little Black & Decker I've had for a very long time. It's the first jigsaw that I bought and used on my own outside of my father's workshop, and I still have it and still use it on occasion. But this will allow you to obviously make curve cuts, but you can make straight cuts with it as well, as long as you've got some sort of straight edge guide. That'll help you along. So a decent quality jigsaw, you can get a jigsaw, basic one, for pretty cheap relative to other tools. So as an all-purpose saw, I would get a jigsaw. Next, I recommend a sander, and this kind of fills out kind of my three basic power tools I would recommend. Go with what's generally recognized as a detail sander. A lot of people would call it a mouse because of Black & Decker's product. This is a Skill Octo. Has a lot of different attachments on it. It's going to be a decent price, but allows you to, why it's called a detail sander, it allows you to get into small spaces, and there are various attachments you can put on that are even more specialized shapes. And the sanding pads are, in a lot of cases, they have the Velcro attachment. You can pick those up, refills for these, you can pick them up off brands, pretty cheap as well. This will get you by in most cases for sanding. Now, I just said I had three power tools, but I do recommend a fourth one. If you can swing it, this is kind of on the periphery of getting a power tool, but a power stapler and nailer. A lot of people don't recommend these for the brads as a nailer, but I think in a beginner situation, it's not a bad idea to have them. The issue with these can be they won't set the nails quite as far as a pneumatic nailer will. But I think in a lot of cases, if you pick up one, it'll get you by and use it for trim work and things like that. The stapler for sure, a lot of staple situations. But I had another one, power one, that I used for a little while, and it carried up to 1.25 inch brads, and it worked okay in a pinch. Now I'm primarily pneumatic nailers, but this is good as the staple gun for upholstery work and things like that. Now, I'll skip the hand tools for a second and jump into safety. The three things you have to look out for are your hearing, your sight, and your respiratory system. So you want to make sure you've got some headphones or earplugs. Just the basic little earplugs you put in are cheap, and those will work just fine. But for a lot of use, have a set of headphones. If you wear glasses like I do, you can get, for your sight protection, larger pair of safety goggles, safety glasses that will fit over. There are various types of those, but I recommend safety glasses. And finally, just very basically, and primarily for particulates, for when you're sanding, cutting, the mask. You can get up a huge respirator mask. I use that for when I'm doing finishes with oils, but for all purposes, you can pick up a pack of these for just a few bucks, and this will serve you well. Now, the next kind of category is measuring and marking. Obviously, a measuring tape. 25 foot this is kind of my all-purpose one I use. I have various links. I carry a 12 foot around with me a lot of times when I'm just going to various places for quick measurements. But a 25 footer will get you by for the most part. Pick up a decent one. I wouldn't get a dollar store measuring tape, but you can still get one relatively decent price. What's called a speedlight square or a combination square. Either one will work fine. The combination square gives you a little bit of adjustment. This helps you with kind of doing a marking line on projects. You have the 45-degree angle here. You have the same purpose out of this. This will be really cheap. This is a bit more expensive, but for the beginner, pick up a square. This one has a built-in level, which is handy, but not necessary. Next in the measuring and marking, I recommend a flexible metal ruler, and you can pick this up anywhere. This will help not only with just straight line measurements and sort of a straight edge. You can also use it for making curved markings. Back to the speedlight square. You can use this as a straight edge guide when you're doing a cross cut, cutting a board to length. That can come in handy for that. So not only in the measurement area, but as a straight edge guide. Now, a few of the other little things. And no woodworker has ever said I have too many clamps. So I would pick up as many clamps as you can, and over the course of time, just keep adding to your collection. This is a quick clamp. Irwin quick grip. You squeeze it to clamp in. It has a release where you can adjust it like that. This is called a spreader and clamp because you can reverse the ends and use it to open up an area or keep a space open. These are a bit pricey, but you can find cheaper alternatives which will work okay for most people. Lots of different types of clamps, but I recommend you start off with some, let's say 18-inch clamps. They will work for a lot of different projects. Go smaller, go larger, whatever you can do, but you'll always want to be adding clamps to your collection. Can't do anything without a carpenter's pencil. This is one that has refills that just feed in through the end, but just a plain old-fashioned wood carpenter pencil will work just fine, and they make sharpeners for them, so you don't have to use a knife to do it. But I do also use, in certain situations, a 0.9 millimeter mechanical pencil. A lot of people do not recommend that, but it works for me in certain situations on large pieces. This is what's going to work. Dimensional lumber, things like that. Rubber mallet. Lots of different applications for this. Sometimes just for nudging pieces in place, but I'd always have a rubber mallet on hand, as well as a light duty hammer. Little 7-ounce hammer will work for most of your projects. Now, I did mention you could use a jigsaw for cross cutting, but a basic cheap miter box and saw will be the best thing for your actual cross cuts and your miter cuts, because on this this box you can do the various angles, 45, 22.5, and then a straight cut there. These pieces will clamp a board in place while you cut, hold it securely. I've actually done some trim work after we had floorings installed using one of these saws. So you know it can work for extensive projects, but for just real quick cuts, this will be very helpful. It won't be as fast as using something like your jigsaw, but when we're talking about beginner situation, you're probably only going to do a handful of projects. This is the way to go. Now I had a pocket hole jig, which if you're familiar with my projects and any of my blog posts, that I'm a big pocket hole jig fan, and you can spend a lot of money on the bigger jigs, such as the K5. which is the new one that's out. Or you can spend a fraction of that for a jig that drills one pocket hole, or step up to what's called a Kreg Jr. or R3 jig. It'll do 2 holes at a time, just like, or not at a time, but you can do 2 holes while you have it clamped in place. You can spend anywhere from $20 to $140 on a jig, but what the pocket hole jig allows you to do is join boards very quickly and in situations where you couldn't with some of these other tools. And this is where the drill will come in handy, obviously for drilling pocket holes. So I recommend this jig. I kind of put it at the tail end of all these things because it's not absolutely necessary, I think, for a beginner, but I think it's a great addition, maybe the next step once you have some of your other tools to jump up for a little more complex projects. Again, the little basic mini jig will drill 1 hole at a time. You clamp it in place. There's a guide that goes with it. That will, on the cheap, allow you to drill pocket holes, again stepping up to a mid-level jig and then on up. So start with this with the beginner, I would recommend. And my next question is actually about the Kreg Jr. jig, or what's also called the R3. And I had a question about changing the settings on it. And you'll see in the inset video a little bit better. Underneath, on the guides on the side, the little gray guides on the side, you'll see where there are measurements listed here. 1/2, 3/4, there's breaks in between, but 1 1/4, 1 1/2. And that references the thickness of the material you're going to be drilling into. So the question I had was about adjusting that. And there are 2 arrows on the bottom which you use to line up the guides on the side, and basically you match that with the thickness of the material. So 1 by is going to be 3/4 of an inch, 2 by will be 1 1/2 inches, and that's it. That's basically it. Pretty easy. There's a clamp that obviously goes with this to hold it in place. You clamp it in place and move on there. So it's a little bit hidden relative to maybe some of the other pocket hole jigs. When this jig came out, it was really designed for folks that were not familiar with pocket hole joinery, and really people who wanted to use it in a DIY setting, maybe not a lot of furniture building, but maybe a piece here and there. So it's rudimentary in a sense that relative to some of the higher level jigs, but I think it's a good little jig for the basic DIYer, someone who's just going to build a couple of projects here and there. But anyway, that's pretty straightforward on how to adjust it. When I first got this and played around with it a couple of years ago, I did have an issue or have a little bit of a trouble adjusting the guides, and it's real simple now when I look back at it, but you're just pressing a little ridged area here and it moves back and forth and it locks in place. So it stops at the areas you need it to, so you're not kind of having to micro adjust it as you go along. And obviously you need to make sure that you've got the proper screws for the application that you're using as well. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. And for more tips and projects, I recommend you head over to my website at chiefshop.com. And also, if you have any questions about projects or woodworking in general, shoot me an email at chiefshop.com, or post a comment on this video, or head over to my blog and post some questions there. And like I always like to say at the end of these videos, it's time to get off the computer, get out in the shop, and make some sawdust.